High-speed rail. For decades now, those three words have been thrown around more than a loose bolt in a red rattler. The ideas behind this concept are generally brought up whenever Australia has gone to a federal election. In fact, at the last federal election, Anthony Albanese pledged $500 million to venture a first stage of an East Coast HSR from Melbourne to Brisbane, being from Sydney to Newcastle.
Creating jobs and connecting communities up and down the east coast of Australia, overcoming the tyranny of distance that's held regions back.
This rail corridor is currently the busiest in Australia, with both freight and passenger trains moving enormous amounts of items and up to a staggering 15 million passengers every year. So over the years we have seen millions of dollars thrown at studies and business cases for high-speed rail, which have seemingly gone nowhere. However, it appears to be finally gaining momentum, with High Speed Rail Authority CEO Tim Parker recently attending the Ausrail conference and pushing his seriousness for getting the project moving, saying, "I think once we have that proof of concept, it will be easier for governments and others to see the value and invest in it." Older plans had placed the Sydney junction of the high-speed corridor at Olympic Park or Parramatta, more than likely a cheaper option than tunnelling into Central Station. Also a good connection to Western Sydney, and when the Metro West project is finished, a quick 20-minute trip east to the CBD. Tim Parker, however, believes the line should come to Central Station in Sydney, making it a truly world-class station with comparisons to St Pancras in London or Gare du Nord in Paris. Previous high-speed rail proposals have come from the private sector. With this public sector involvement, we may actually see something happen finally, and maybe get passengers out of their cars and into trains, particularly from the Newcastle region, where a brave bunch of commuters do actually commute from Newcastle to Sydney on a daily basis. As it stands, the quickest service from Newcastle interchange to Central Station, which in peak times only makes limited stops, still takes 2 hours and 35 minutes. Assuming you catch a similar service on the commute home, that's a staggering 5 hours of commuting a day. High-speed rail will attempt to make this trip an hour, meaning travelling to the Central Coast region would be just a 30-minute trip. On a wider scale, being able to travel between the East Coast capital cities, currently a sloggy half-day on average journey, not to mention far slower than driving a car instead, would have incredible benefits with high-speed rail. Taking passengers out of cars, meaning less congestion and possibly less fatal accidents on our motorways and highways, boosting economies in regional centres by encouraging workers to move out of expensive cities, but still be able to commute comfortably to a city for work from a regional town. And of course, get passengers out of planes by offering a fast rail alternative, thereby easing pressure on an extremely congested flight corridor like Sydney to Melbourne, which according to OAG's 2024 annual report was the 5th busiest route in the world. Yes, the world. Arguably, this part of the debate for high-speed rail has created the most divisiveness, as air carriers would expect a drop in ridership, with an interstate high-speed rail providing the potential competition required to make flight pricing less. Sounds great to a traveller. To airlines, less money is not great. I believe this is partly what has held back our progression to high-speed rail in the past. I strongly believe that rather than compete with air travel, rail will simply provide an alternative. Not everyone is cool with airports and flying, but not everyone is cool either with a 12-hour train trip that can be completed in a fraction of that time in the air, or driving. Cost to benefit is also a strong argument we tend to see when it comes to high-speed rail, with Australia's relatively small population in comparison to other countries with high-speed rail a sore point with skeptics. What seems to be missing in this argument, besides the Sydney to Melbourne air corridor and Sydney to Newcastle train statistics, is the massive amount of tourism Australia's east coast sees every year. I often wonder if international tourists visit Sydney and book a train ticket to Melbourne not knowing its average speed of about 80 kilometres an hour, and then have regrets once it starts moving. Whilst these 40-year-old trains will be updated shortly and provide some modern tech features that are sorely needed, like USB charging and Wi-Fi, the historic regional rail lines of twists, turns and steep grades will not, however. Therein lies a less expensive alternative to building a brand new train system, which is updating and straightening out the current tracks where possible. Our current and future XPT regional trains are capable of reaching speeds of 160 kilometres an hour, but due to the layout of a rail corridor which has barely changed in over a century, never get the opportunity to reach those higher speeds and make the journey more efficient. It's good to see more progress being made on high-speed rail than ever before. Recently, we saw drill rigs around the Central Coast determining tunnel options, as the landscape between Sydney and Newcastle is geographically tricky, something very evident on the current rail line. Tunnelling would be the most viable option to keep speeds at optimum levels. These tunnels may very well be up to 50 kilometres long in some sections. Ambitious, but possible. If the construction of Sydney Metro has shown us anything, it's that we can do incredible things in regard to transport infrastructure. I'm excited to see if this momentum keeps up, and crossing fingers to see if our intercity and regional rail can get to a world standard in the same vein as Sydney Metro. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and until next time, happy commuting.